When I bought the old brick ranch house at the edge of Willow Creek, all I wanted was solitude and a place to work with my hands. After 20 years in the Navy, 15 of them on aircraft carriers, I had no patience left for petty drama or political games. The house needed work, sure, but the bones were good, the lot was private, and the view of the tree line out back was worth every blister. I spent 6 months renovating that place top to bottom. Rewired every outlet, replaced the rotting deck, even added a polished cedar patio out back with a GFCI-protected outlet, perfect for my tools, smoker, and late-night jazz playlists. It was my little sanctuary. That was before I met Karen Monroe. She arrived uninvited one Thursday afternoon, striding across my lawn in designer sandals, a clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon. Her bleached bob bounced with each step, her tiny dog, a yapping fluff ball named Biscuit, yanked at its rhinestone leash like it wanted to chew through my boots. "You must be the new neighbor," she said without a smile. "I'm Karen, HOA president." She held out her hand like I was supposed to kiss it. I shook it once, firm and brief. "Sam Carter. Nice to meet you." Her eyes swept over my porch like a tax assessor. "I noticed you installed an outdoor outlet. That's unconventional." "It's permitted," I said, not rising to the bait. "Co-compliant and inspected. Didn't see anything in the bylaws against it." Karen narrowed her eyes. "Well, it's not exactly in keeping with the aesthetic harmony we strive for here. Exposed utilities tend to invite misuse." "Good thing it's locked down," I replied. "Only I have the switch." She smiled thinly. "We'll see how that goes." I watched her leave, Biscuit yapping in her wake, and told myself she was harmless. Annoying, maybe, but manageable. I was wrong. The following weekend, I noticed the outlet's LED indicator was off, dead. The breaker inside was fine. I replaced the faceplate and tested the voltage. Still nothing. I crouched behind the patio and discovered something odd. An extension cord running from my outlet, looped under the fence, snaking straight into Karen's backyard. Curious, I followed the line and peered through the slats. Her lawn was transformed into a full-blown carnival. A rented bounce house swayed gently beside a margarita machine. A portable speaker played Taylor Swift. Children darted across the grass, with snow cones in hand. My power was fueling the entire event. I walked around and rang her doorbell. Karen answered with a mimosa in hand, sunglasses perched on her forehead, her HOA badge gleaming like a sheriff's star. "You've got something of mine," I said flatly. She looked over her shoulder. "Do I?" "The extension cord you're using. It's plugged into my outdoor outlet." She laughed like I'd told a joke.
"Oh, that."
"You weren't using it and I had guests coming. It's a community event, Sam. We all chip in." I didn't agree to chip in my electricity. Karen sipped her drink, unfazed. "It's on the fence line. Technically, shared property." "No," I said firmly. "It's wired into my panel. It's my power. My meter. That's theft." Her smile vanished. "If you have a problem, file a complaint. Otherwise, I suggest you enjoy the party." I left before I said something that would start a war. Instead, I filed an official complaint with the HOA, citing misuse of private property and unauthorized power tapping. I attached photos, marked the dates, even noted the meter spike on my utility bill. A week later, I got a letter in the mail, stamped with Karen's signature. "Complaint dismissed. No violation found." And beneath that, a fine, $150 for obstructing communal amenities. I stared at the letter for a long time, pulse climbing. I'd served deployments in war zones, outmaneuvered pirates, and dismantled bomb rigs in open seas. But somehow, Karen Monroe, armed with a clipboard and an inflated sense of power, had just declared war. I walked outside, stared at the outlet on my patio, and realized something important. This wasn't about electricity. This was about control. I didn't sleep well after the letter. It sat on the kitchen table like a challenge, bold and smug, the fine circled in red ink. Karen hadn't just dismissed my complaint. She'd twisted it into a punishment. It was her way of saying, "I run this street." I knew her type. Authority drunk. Suburban royalty. The kind who carved their ego into every interaction, who didn't believe in boundaries unless they built them. The next day, I installed a metal lockbox over the outlet, industrial grade, weatherproof, bolted in with security screws. I even added a private property, do not use placard, just for good measure. It was subtle, but clear. A line drawn in brushed aluminum. 2 days later, the box was gone. I stood at my patio, staring at the empty screw holes like bullet wounds. In its place, a heavy-duty extension cord was once again plugged in and snaking under the fence like a trespassing vine. I followed it, heart-thudding, and found a full setup. Another party. This one had an inflatable slide, a catering tent, and what looked like a portable espresso bar. Music thumped from Bluetooth speakers. Kids screamed in delight. Karen stood at the center, greeting guests like a queen surveying her court. This time I didn't knock. I flipped the main breaker inside my house and shut it down. 10 minutes later, she was on my doorstep. No mimosa this time. No smile. You cut the power during a child's birthday party. You broke into my property and stole electricity. I replied, arms folded. Karen took a step forward. That outlet faces the common fence. I reminded the board and we voted. Any accessible outdoor utilities are considered shared use. You are the board. She didn't deny it. You're abusing your authority, I said, voice low. And you're interfering with neighborhood harmony, she snapped. I've already issued a new fine, $500. If you continue this behavior, we'll pursue legal action. The door closed on her mid-sentence. I stood in the quiet for a long moment, staring out through the living room window at the useless outlet. Something in me shifted, then solidified. This wasn't a neighborly squabble anymore. It was warfare. And Karen? She'd made the mistake of thinking I played by the same rules she did. That night, I went into the garage and pulled out the original wiring plans from when I'd renovated. While gutting the patio last fall, I'd rerouted a few buried lines and discovered an old and used junction box from a time when the house had been on septic. It still existed, repurposed during renovations into a warning system, one I never activated because I'd connected to city sewer. But the lines still ran beneath the yard. One low-voltage connection still fed into a relay tied to a backup overflow pipe. Technically legal. Functionally unpredictable. And the outdoor outlet had been wired through the same panel. I studied the diagrams, heart-thudding. The image of Karen's smug face burned into my memory. She wanted power? Fine. Let her have all she could handle. I built a custom circuit, a bypass loop triggered by a hidden toggle inside the breaker box. It wasn't dangerous, just inconvenient. Whenever flipped, the outlet would pulse power through the old septic alarm circuit, pressurizing the overflow vent just enough to release. It wouldn't damage anything, but the smell alone would send people running for higher ground. It was crude. It was petty. It was perfect. The following week, I waited. Karen announced another event via HOA email blast, a summer kickoff party sponsored by Neighborhood Contributions. I wasn't asked. I wasn't invited. But I knew my role. Saturday morning, I sipped coffee on the porch as the tents went up next door. I watched teenagers plug in food warmers and a margarita machine. I watched the bounce house inflate and the Bluetooth speaker flicker to life. At 2:14 p.m., with the party in full swing, I stepped into my utility room and flipped the switch. Click. Then I waited. The first sign that my plan had worked was the sound, muffled gagging over the bass beat of pop music. Then came the chaos. I peeked out my window just in time to see Karen's guests staggering away from the margarita machine, pinching their noses, faces contorted in disgust. One woman dropped her plate of mini quiches as she stumbled back, coughing into a napkin. A teenager unplugged the bounce house mid-jump and darted for the side gate. The smell hit next, a rank, eye-watering stench wafting over the fence like a toxic cloud. Decades of septic sludge stirred just enough to vent a whisper of its long-forgotten presence. I hadn't triggered a flood, just a belch from the past, perfectly timed and precisely aimed. Karen came tearing around the corner, her face twisted in fury. She was barefoot, heels forgotten somewhere on the lawn, and Biscuit trailed behind her like a panicked little mop. She pounded on my door. I let her. When I finally opened it, I kept my expression neutral. "You did this," she shrieked. "You sabotaged the party." "I was in here the whole time," I said calmly, gesturing behind me. "Haven't even been outside." "You think this is funny?" she snapped, eyes watering from the stench that had followed her up my front steps. I folded my arms. "Karen, you're the one who insisted on using my outlet. If there's a problem with the wiring, that's your responsibility, right? You said it was shared." She faltered, just a moment, caught between indignation and the faintest flicker of realization. "I'm reporting this," she said. "You'll be removed from the HOA." "You mean your HOA?" I asked. "You've already fined me twice for reporting you. Think anyone's buying that you're impartial?" Her lips thinned. "The board trusts my judgment. I've been keeping records," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Screenshots of your emails, photos of your events, even meter readings. I've got a solid case of selective enforcement, retaliation, and power abuse." "You wouldn't dare." "I would. And I will. All it takes is one call to the county." She glared at me like she wanted to lunge forward and strangle me on the spot, but she didn't. Instead, she turned sharply and stormed off, her heels clutched in one hand, Biscuit scampering behind her. That night, I expected more retaliation. Maybe another fine, or a bogus citation about my lawn being improperly edged. But nothing came. Instead, I received an anonymous note in my mailbox. "Thank you." Someone finally stood up to her. A neighbor. Over the next week, the neighborhood felt different. Karen's iron grip loosened. The HOA bulletin board, once plastered with rules and her smiling face, remained blank. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now nodded at me as I passed. One even waved. But Karen wasn't done. 2 weeks later, I came home to find a county code inspector parked in my driveway. A man in a tan vest and a clipboard introduced himself as Officer Jimenez from the Department of Environmental Compliance. "Got a report about an illegal septic discharge," he said. Of course she had. I led him around back, showed him the schematics, explained the renovation, walked him through every switch, outlet, and diagram. I'd built it clean, legal, safe. Officer Jimenez examined everything, took a few notes, and chuckled as he flipped through the inspection history. "Looks like you actually improved the system," he said. "Someone clearly doesn't understand how graywater alarm relays work." I nodded. "Or they don't care." He shook his head. "No violation here. But if she files another false report, she's the one who'll be investigated." As he left, I stood on the porch and watched the sun dip below the trees, feeling something I hadn't felt in months: control. Not dominance, not revenge, just balance. Karen had fired her best shot. Now it was my turn to aim higher. Because the truth was, the HOA wasn't hers to rule. It belonged to the community. And if she wanted to play politics, she'd just opened the door to something bigger than clipboards and party tents. Summer ripened into August, and with it came the annual HOA meeting. A dull affair in most neighborhoods, but here, it was a coronation. Karen always presided at the head of the room like it was her birthright, gavel in hand, her board flanking her like loyal knights. It wasn't governance. It was theater. This year, I reserved a seat early. When I walked into the community center, I wasn't alone. The quiet nods I'd started receiving after the birthday disaster had multiplied into something more: trust. I had the note from the anonymous neighbor folded in my back pocket. I didn't need it. Their eyes said enough. Karen stood at the front, clipboard in hand, blazer pressed to perfection. Biscuit lounged on a blanket beside the podium. She greeted the crowd like usual, cloying and confident. "Welcome, neighbors," she began. "As president of the HOA, I'd like to open the floor with a review of last quarter's improvements." "Point of order," I said, standing up. Heads turned. Karen froze mid-sentence. "The bylaws allow for officer nominations at the annual meeting," I continued. "I'd like to nominate a new president." The silence was immediate, then punctured by a shocked, whispered, "He can do that." from somewhere in the back. Karen's eyes sharpened into daggers. This isn't the appropriate. It's in the charter, I said. Page 6. Section C. She knew I was right. An older man near the front, Mr. DeFranco, who'd once received a citation for unauthorized wind chimes, raised his hand. I second the motion. Karen's jaw flexed. She opened her mouth, but protocol had already overtaken her authority. The floor was no longer hers. I walked forward and faced the room. My name's David. Most of you know me as the guy Karen fined for filing complaints, the one she accused of sabotage, the one who got an inspection called on him. But I think some of you also know the truth. You've seen it yourselves: unfair rules, biased enforcement, personal vendettas dressed up as community care. Heads began to nod. Someone murmured, "She fined my kid for sidewalk chalk. She's made herself queen of this HOA." I continued. But this isn't a monarchy. It's a neighborhood. And it's time we take it back. I stepped aside. Karen stood there, lips pursed, her face draining of color. "We'll proceed to a vote," said DeFranco, standing with surprising firmness for a man his age. "All in favor of electing David as the new HOA president?" Hands went up. One by one, row by row. Even the woman who lived beside Karen, who had always smiled tightly and never spoken out, raised hers. When the final count was done, the result was indisputable. Karen had lost. The gavel was handed to me. For a moment, I just stared at it. Heavy, wooden, ordinary, but symbolic. I looked up at the faces watching me, not with fear or deference, but with hope. "Thank you," I said simply. "Let's get to work." In the weeks that followed, we overhauled the HOA. Fines were reviewed. Complaints were reopened. We added transparency measures and term limits. I started a community forum, open to everyone. We even planned a block party where everyone was welcome. No exclusive email invites. No hidden agendas. Karen disappeared from public view. Rumor had it she tried to rally a new voting bloc, but no one listened. The spell was broken. Without her titles, she was just another neighbor, one who no longer controlled the power or the outlet. As for the extension cord, I left the outlet capped and sealed, but this time, I added something new, a small metal plaque beneath it that read, "Private property. Respect goes both ways." Sometimes I still catch a glimpse of her walking biscuit past my yard. She never looks up. That's fine. The message had been delivered. Not just with wires and pressure valves, but with unity, persistence, and a little taste of poetic justice. Because in this neighborhood, power isn't something you steal. It's something you earn. And once the people remember that, it's a current you can't shut off.